Germany's underwater world is still a well-kept secret. Hidden from view, a colourful community of plants and animals live in their own little universe. Their lives shaped by the formidable force of water. Its large rivers are home to some mighty fish which migrate upstream to breed, as they have done for millennia. It's a journey fraught with danger. From Germany's central highlands to the North Sea. A journey that reveals a little-known and mysterious world beneath the surface. It's mid-February. Germany is in the icy grip of winter. The landscape is covered in a deep layer of snow. Only the fast-flowing streams continue their journey. The freezing temperatures have created glassy sculptures along the way. For weeks, the lakes have been locked away under a thick sheet of ice. Plants and animals lie dormant, waiting for the coming spring. Most fish, like the carp, seek out a warm spot near the bottom of the lake, where temperatures remain around 4 degrees above freezing. They reduce their metabolism to a minimum and literally sit out the winter. Germany's largest freshwater fish, the Wels catfish, is also sleeping it out on the lake bed. But not everyone's asleep. The northern pike hunts all year round. Nonetheless, it's hard to find prey in winter. Most smaller fish are in a torpor and hard to spot. The pike's hunting instinct is only triggered by movement. An unwitting crab scuttling on the lake floor immediately attracts attention. It's little more than a snack for the large predator, but it keeps the hunger at bay. This carp may have had a lucky escape, but the danger is not over yet. Other hunters are on the prowl above. The sea eagle can spot the silhouette of the fish through the ice. The carp has little choice but to move. Woken suddenly from his torpor, he is sluggish and disorientated. This time, the eagle was only after a dead fish, frozen within the ice. The Eifel region in western Germany is pockmarked with circular lakes. They were formed 20,000 years ago by volcanic explosions, when cold groundwater collided with hot lava. The resulting craters gradually filled with water. One of them is still above an active volcano today. It last erupted 13,000 years ago. The volcano continues to bubble away underground, releasing foul-smelling toxic gases into the water. Moisture-laden clouds race across the skies towards the Harz Mountains. The forested hills are the tallest mountain range in northern Germany and known for their fairy tale landscape. A muskrat is waiting for spring and the fresh growth of plants. The first warm days in March triggers a sudden burst of activity. Frogs awaken from hibernation with only one thing on their mind. The Harz region is endowed with a vast network of lakes and reservoirs, and over 500 kilometers of rivers and canals that were once built for the region's mining industry. It's one of the largest historical water management systems in the world and has been declared a World Heritage Site. The sun's warming rays finally melt away the last signs of winter. The rush of meltwater sets the wheels of the watermill in motion. In the past, wheels like this would have worked the old mining lifts, transporting people and animals underground. Today, the man-made waterways provide a welcome refuge for amphibians. Alpine newts. The male fans his tail to impress the female. It's the breeding season, and males have turned a dark blue color, while the females are a drabber brown. The extensive network of man-made canals eventually gives way to natural streams and rivers. In spring, the meltwater turns these into rushing torrents. The powerful force of the water wears down the rocks and polishes them to smooth pebbles. Or perfectly formed round marbles. Living in fast-flowing streams requires special skills. For small fish, swimming against the strong current while searching for prey is no easy feat. Young rainbow trout seek out sheltered spots behind the rocks and wait for small creatures dislodged by the current to drift by. A casualty from above is also quickly snapped up. The tranquil waters of a lake provide less challenging conditions. A great crested newt, a larger relative of the alpine newt. It spotted a small water flea. Gotcha! The smallest inhabitants of the lake face the greatest hazards. Of the many thousands of tadpoles, only a few will survive to become adult frogs. This little fellow has come precariously close to the spillway of the lake. Having survived the dangerous drop, it now faces the gauntlet of many hungry mouths. At last, it reaches the safety of calmer waters. The new pond is home to underwater architects, caddisfly larvae, which build their protective cases from bits of dead vegetation. The predator at this waterhole is a ground beetle. It's attracted by the hundreds of tadpoles swarming at the water's edge. It's got its eye on one particularly juicy individual. The beetle sucks out its victim's body fluids, leaving behind the empty shell. The Harz region's numerous lakes and rivers still hold many secrets. The clear blue waters are rich in wildlife hidden from our eyes. They are teeming with life, a vibrant community of creatures that lead their lives below the surface. The European eel has traveled hundreds of kilometers to reach these waters. It started life out in the Atlantic, entering Europe's estuaries as a transparent glass eel. Swimming upstream against the current, the young elver finally reached these freshwater lakes. It will stay here until it becomes sexually mature in a few years' time, and then return to the sea to spawn and die. The pike, on the other hand, spends its entire life in these lakes. Young pike are already born with a strong hunting instinct. Even a small hatchling has no trouble catching his dinner. Although this one may have bitten off more than it can chew. The most mysterious creatures of all are the microscopic organisms of the lake. Strange alien life forms that resemble algal growths. In fact, they are tiny animals known as bryozoans. They filter nutrients from the water, taking advantage of the flow generated by colonies of mussels. The small coral-like creatures attach themselves to any hard substrate, forming a moss-like covering that has earned them their other name, moss animals. There are some 5,000 different kinds, and yet they remain largely unknown to most people. They live in colonies of thousands of individuals. Each one is little more than a millimeter in size, but together they filter the water like a gigantic purification system. In the lower hearts, the water makes its way through narrow valleys and gorges. It also disappears underground, seeping through the porous limestone rock. Carving out huge caverns, like the Hareman's Cave, it drips from the walls, creating spectacular calcium formations. Deep down, in the heart of the caves, is the lair of a dragon. The olm, or cave salamander, was once thought to be a dragon baby. It owes its strange appearance to living in permanent darkness. Having no use for eyes, it's completely blind and finds its way around with touch and smell. Unlike other salamanders, the olm breathes with gills that grow as red tufts from the side of the head. The animals in this cave were introduced from Croatia some 80 years ago. They are all males, so cannot breed. In these cold waters, they can go for years without feeding and live to be nearly 100 years old. Emerging out of the lower Harz, numerous streams pour their waters into one of Germany's biggest rivers, the Elbe. The young river winds its way through spectacular sandstone cliffs. Bizarre rock formations tower over one of Germany's most iconic and breathtaking landscapes. Just north of the sandstone mountains, the scenery changes dramatically. The extraction of coal has left deep scars in the landscape. A vast and barren wasteland greets the eye. Nothing was able to grow in this desolate moonscape, not even a blade of grass. When water was finally redirected to flood the abandoned quarries, life returned to the region once more. The murky waters still conceal the evidence of human destruction that once ravaged these valleys. Animals slowly recolonized the deserted pits. European pike were some of the first arrivals, their eggs transported on the backs of water birds. Local anglers and fishermen reintroduced carp and other fish into the waters. And it wasn't long before the lifeless desert was transformed into a rich and diverse underwater world. Ornamental koi, a domesticated form of the carp, have also found their way here. They happily interbreed with their grey cousins to produce a colourful mix of exotic-looking fish. Carp can grow to be over 1 metre long and weigh as much as a full-grown Labrador. They stir up the sediment, looking for small worms and insects. Returning abandoned mine pits to nature is an environmental success story. New water breathes new life into the wasteland. It's early spring, and the rivers break their banks, creating vast floodplains. The water causes chaos to human lives, but nature deals much better with it. Flood meadows in fact depend on the seasonal flooding. Dragonflies are busy laying their eggs. Each male guards his female by gripping her at the back of the neck. The ground beetle is on the prowl again. He's caught a female dragonfly off guard. A grass snake is also out hunting. It's a good swimmer and at home in the flooded meadows. The floodwater awakens a creature that has lain dormant for years. As the pools fill with water, a tiny fossil comes back to life. The triops, or tadpole shrimp. It has survived almost unchanged for 220 million years and is thought to be the oldest living animal species on Earth. The tadpole shrimp's eggs can remain dormant in the ground for decades, hatching only when the pool floods. The tiny crustacean leads a short and frenetic life, digging into the sediment in search of food particles. Most are females and don't need males to breed. They produce offspring by virgin birth from unfertilized eggs. Eventually, the flood water is channeled back into canals and rivers. North of the River Elbe, in the county of Mecklenburg, lies Germany's Lake District, the land of 1,000 lakes. It has over 2,000 lakes, rivers and streams. Peaceful coves and vast reed beds provide a safe refuge for a great variety of wildlife. A bittern hides among the thick reeds. Its young chicks are almost ready to leave the nest. The secretive bird is rarely seen, its mottled brown plumage helping it to blend in among the tall grass. Another wetland resident leaves more obvious signs of its presence. It cuts down trees and builds dams and lodges. The beaver was hunted to near extinction in Europe by the 20th century, but today its large lodges are becoming a frequent sight once more. Inside, the adults are raising their young family of up to 6 kits. The young beavers are already exploring their surroundings and learning which plants make a good meal. They spend most of their time playing and copying their parents. They still have a lot to learn and will gradually gain the courage to venture further afield into the vast underwater world at their doorstep. Mecklenburg's lakes are like no other, with an astonishing diversity of marine life. There are over 50 different species of fish, and amongst them, some rare and unusual kinds. The Atlantic sturgeon, an ancient and prehistoric-looking fish. Sturgeons have been around for almost 200 million years and swam with the dinosaurs. Sadly today, this extraordinary relic from the past is critically endangered. The biggest threat facing most fish today are not their natural predators, but man. Fishing lines, baskets and nets take more than their fair share of the water's bounties. Even powerful hunters like the pike often become the hunted. "39,000 tons of fish are taken from Germany's oceans and inland waters every year, around a quarter of those from freshwater lakes and rivers. In Mecklenburg, fishing is mostly carried out sustainably. The key to sustainable fishing is to avoid over-harvesting and depleting fish stocks irreversibly. Populations need to be able to recover for fish and fishing to survive into the future. Fishermen have long been an integral part of the Mecklenburg Lake District. And so has the osprey. The large raptor feeds almost exclusively on fish, but only takes what it needs to survive. Although it sometimes takes on more than it can handle, it never threatens to upset the balance of nature. Cormorants are also superb fishermen. In shallow waters with plentiful fish, the birds flourish and breed prolifically. After years of persecution, their populations are now recovering at a dramatic pace. To prevent the overfishing of Mecklenburg's lakes, local fishermen have to ensure that the waters are regularly restocked. Small fish farms guarantee a regular supply of juvenile fish. A more unusual breeding program is attempting to reintroduce the European crayfish to these waters. This native species was driven close to extinction by the crayfish plague, a deadly fungus brought over from North America by the signal crayfish. The hope is that these youngsters will help the European crayfish population recover in due time. The female carries the fertilized eggs on her legs for half the year until they hatch. The male has bigger claws and a special pair of forward-facing legs that are used for mating. The reintroduction program is proving successful. A number of Mecklenburg's rivers and lakes now have stable populations. As the sun sinks below the horizon, the lake comes alive with the night shift. The American signal crayfish hides during the day, much like its European cousin. Now it emerges to look for small food particles in the sediment. A rainbow trout is also looking for a meal. All this activity attracts the most powerful predator on the block, the pike. The pike has a voracious appetite and feeds incessantly. Not surprisingly, it hunts both during the day and at night. Any little movement catches its eye, so it pays to hide or make a quick escape. A muskrat swimming overhead is oblivious to the danger below. This time, it is lucky. South of Mecklenburg, the river Elbe slowly makes its way towards the North Sea. The name Elbe comes from the old German word for river. The flow of the water keeps the river's inhabitants on the move. The Chinese mitten crab finally seeks shelter under a large rock. Since 1990, the water quality of the Elbe has much improved, and fish populations are making a comeback. The Atlantic salmon was once common in Germany's rivers, But by the beginning of the 20th century, it had completely disappeared. Reintroduction efforts began here in the Elbe in 1995, and 3 years later, the first fully grown adults were seen. Now, numbers are on the increase. The aim is to boost the population until it can sustain itself without human help. Another endangered fish has had to wait much longer for a helping hand. The tiny hatchlings of the Atlantic sturgeon. They're being raised in the laboratory of a fish farm. Sturgeon meat and eggs sold as caviar are a lucrative business. Fish farms such as this one not only reduce the pressure on wild sturgeon, but also help with the reintroduction program. Some of the young hatchlings bred here are destined to be released in Germany's rivers. The tiny eggs, or black gold, are the reason why the sturgeon is critically endangered. Here, the eggs are artificially inseminated with sperm. Each step of the breeding process and caviar production is carefully controlled and monitored. A few days after fertilization, the young fish larvae hatch. The hatchlings are miniature versions of the adults. They'll need to be around 25 centimeters in length before they're ready to be released into the wild. The young sturgeons will be set free in carefully selected, suitable rivers. But the small fish are not used to the strong pull of the current. And some still need a little bit of a helping hand. Small tags on the dorsal fins will help researchers to identify and monitor individual animals. It's the beginning of a new life for the young sturgeon. A life full of new challenges and dangers. Not all of them will make it to adulthood. Specially designed fishways have been created to help them to pass safely through dams and weirs. Europe's biggest fishway is on the banks of the Elbe at Get.factual. It's large enough to allow the migrating sturgeon to pass through and make their way to the North Sea. But before they reach the open ocean, the fish face one last hurdle. Hamburg City, Germany's busiest port. Here, the waters are dark and turbid, heavy with sediments and industrial waste. It's a bleak and desolate environment for wildlife. It's hard to believe that any fish could survive in these murky waters. But the sturgeon have little trouble making their way through this underwater wasteland. There are over 20 species of sturgeon worldwide, and most are bottom feeders. While some spend their entire lives in fresh water, a few embark on a migration to the open ocean. All sturgeon have sensitive barbels hanging from their chins, which they drag along the riverbed, feeling their way around. Eyes are of little use in dark, muddy water, so they use touch and smell to find their prey. Being slow-growing and very late to become mature, sturgeon are particularly vulnerable to overfishing, and most species are currently endangered. Escorted by gigantic ocean liners, the river now enters the North Sea. The North Sea coast, with its vast mudflats and salt marshes, is one of the richest ecosystems on Earth, and much of it a national park. As the tide retreats and exposes the huge expanse of bare mud, a community of specialist creatures is revealed. The animals that live here are adapted to extreme changes in water levels and salinity. The sand piles emerging from the soft mud are made by tiny burrowing worms. They provide plentiful food for birds like oyster catchers. To eat and be eaten. One moment a predator, the next prey. From the tidal estuary, the sturgeon finally reach the open ocean. Their journey takes them past a geological oddity, Heligoland, Germany's most distant island. It's famous for its red sandstone cliffs that descend steeply into the water. The waters here are spectacularly rich in marine life. Another well-kept secret of Germany's underwater world.